Welcome to Conversations with Deborah, a bi-coastal dialogue with my friend Deborah. I'm Malcolm Berman and my
I'm Deborah
co-host
Manning,
Deborah Manning,
and
and
I'm
we
here.
talk.
I'm a native Californian, but moved here 5.5 years ago with my dear husband and a couple of cats to Greenville, South Carolina. So we are now Greenvillians, but I'll always
Greenvillians.
remain a Californian, I must say.
Well, I live out in Los Angeles now, and I've been living here for 40 years, but I'm from New York, and I'm a New Yorker.
There you are. See?
It's funny, you don't, where you grew up and where you were nurtured, that seems to be, where you're from, no matter
Yeah,
how many years you live in other places.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So what's up with you today?
Nothing except the weather.
Oh, okay. Tell me.
Yesterday was 96.
Oh
Now
no.
over here, it's just hit 90 and it's 12 o'clock.
Oh no.
And
Are
I
they
don't,
predict what are they predicting for today? How much higher?
uh, mid to high 90s. And then that's
Well,
that's in certain parts, as you know from being in Angelino,
yeah.
from the beaches is one weather, one temperature. The valley is another temperature. The
Mhm.
mountains is another temperature. Then you have
Yeah.
the low desert and the high desert.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
what our danger here is because of the heat and the dryness, we're in a drought. We seem to
Mhm.
be in a drought the last 40 years I've been here. But now we have the danger of the fires again.
Yeah. Yeah. I,
And
I hope that I hope that Governor Newsom, who apparently is going to be recalled, it looks like they have enough signatures and what have you. But I hope that Governor Newsom has decided to kind of rethink his forest management policy and to do some controlled burns. I remember when I was a news reporter in Los Angeles, we did they did controlled burns to get rid of all of the detritus and all of the dead vegetation that apparently they've decided not to do. But I hope that they're going to start to change that.
but the uh, I don't know how much they can because a lot of the forests are controlled by the federal government. They're not state lands, and I don't
Well,
know
the
if
good
they could do the
well, the good
control
thing about
forest.
it is the good thing about it is now that you have control of the federal
Right.
government, it should be easy.
It's not easy, but something can be done.
Something can be done.
Right.
Well,
Nothing that he inherited is
oh,
easy.
well, let's go on to the big news, the elephant in the room, which of course was Biden's address to Congress at almost 100 days, which is phenomenally weight of time uh,
Well, it was
compared to
99
some of
days.
the other.
It was
Yeah,
99 days, I think.
99
I think he
days.
mentioned it was 99, but for the sake of argument, we called it 100. But it's
So
normally State of the Union, but it wasn't called State of the Union, and I'm not
no,
exactly sure why.
I'm not sure either, but a lot of things are changing. But what was your overall impression of President Biden's speech?
Uh, I thought it was good. I think that he has an entirely different style,
Hmm.
and when he speaks, you listen because
Hmm.
he's not shouting, he's not blaming anybody else. He has a very easygoing voice.
Hmm.
And it's like I think it was Franklin Delano. It was a Franklin Delano Roosevelt or Teddy Roosevelt that
Go
said,
ahead.
"Speak softly but carry a big stick."
That was Teddy, good old
Teddy,
Teddy. Hmm.
and that's what he was doing. He was speaking in that tone of voice that you listened to him. He wasn't
Hmm.
shouting at you, and he wasn't, uh, performing. There was
Well,
a very sincere tone, and I like a lot of his policies.
mhm. Well,
And
I like some of his policies, but I do have to say I was extremely disappointed. I mean, I was happy that Nancy Pelosi decided not to rip up his speech. I thought that was at least a high
well,
point
yeah,
of that, whereas she decided to rip up the former president's speech was just unbelievably childish. But I was a
right,
little
but it was justly.
no,
It should have been with his speech, but we won't go into that.
no, it wasn't. You know that. No, it wasn't. You can
No,
have disagreements.
no, I think the speech was horrible, and what he said was horrible. Her tearing it up like that, I don't necessarily think was right.
Thank
But
you. And you and I agree on that. And it just, I'm sorry. It's just beyond the pale. It's very
anyway,
childish.
let's get back to what's happening today. I
Well,
mean,
one of the things I must say, I was disappointed with President Biden's speech. I
as
was
I knew you would
disappointed.
be.
No, no, no. I mean, you know that I'm an independent, and I will call a spade a spade. I criticized former President Trump when I felt as though he needed to be criticized, and I'll do the same thing as a former news reporter with current President Biden. I do find it very troubling that we were pitched as having a candidate who was going to be a moderate. He's anything but a moderate. And when you have progressives such as AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, applauding him and saying that it's far better agenda than we could ever imagine in the progressive world, that kind of concerns me. Once again, he does not have a mandate from the American people. 74 to 78 million Americans did not vote for Joe Biden. He talks about unifying. I've yet to see any unification per se. I see crucifixion. I mean, when Tim Scott, who was the GOP's response to the president, I mean, when Tim Scott was then racially disparaged as Uncle Tim, and that was kept on social media for more than 11 hours, come off it. The problem is we cannot continue to talk about how white people are evil. I was incredibly offended when I was told by the president that the biggest terror threat at this point right now is white supremacy. Malcolm, I'm in the South, okay? South Carolina was the first state to secede from the Union, okay? Well, guess what? I have been here for 5.5 years, and my husband and I get around. I mean, we're up and down the state, what have you. It's a small state. We meet a lot of people and what have you. I've had a single one instance of any type of white supremacy when I was solicited because I'm tall and blonde and wouldn't you like to join the KKK? No, I really would not like to join the KKK. But that's one single instance. We're not seeing that quote unquote white supremacy. And to be able to label it as white supremacy, why don't we just call it domestic terrorism if that's what it is?
Yeah, well, did you happen to remember a date in history called January 6th?
I understand it. And you realize
who were the groups that were attacking the Capitol?
Well,
Mainly.
The funny thing about it was they alleged that there were weapons drawn. The only weapons that were drawn were by the Capitol Police. The other instance I've also heard of, and I've been backed up by a couple of different newspapers and media outlets, that the people that were arrested, they're basically in solitary confinement for 23 hours of the day. Now, I have not heard of a situation where you don't have a speedy trial. Why are we not having a speedy trial here? That's
where you don't have a speedy trial?
Now we're into May?
Excuse me, go over to any major courtroom or jail in any major city and find out whether the poor folk have a speedy trial, especially the folks that don't have money for bail. Find out if they have a speedy trial.
If you're calling them the Trump supporters, they obviously have money for bail, but they're not, I find it just fascinating that we keep focusing in on things like January 6th, which was a horrific situation.
Okay.
But we have not seen these people come to trial. And we completely, at this point, continue to ignore the riots happening in places like Portland, in Seattle, Louisville. The cops are now resigning, and that's certainly understandable.
But two things. Number one, the protests that happen in the other states, as you cited them, is not an attack on the Capitol. It's not nearly as severe as someone running in and says, let's hang the vice president. Let's get Nancy Pelosi and kill her. And they were shouting that, and they had well, not guns, they had a noose, and they were coming, and that's what they were going for. So I don't think they're comparable. But the reason
once again, I don't understand why Nancy Pelosi turned down a request to have the National Guard there, number one. And number two, I don't understand why you literally had windows that were able to be broken This is the Capitol, for God's sakes. You have what's called bulletproof glass. I'm not getting it. It's almost as though they were invited in to go ahead and do their craziness. And I find it fascinating that the Democrats turn around. This is prior to the Derek Chauvin verdict, where you
Yeah.
have Democrat, good old Maxine Waters, and I used to cover her as a Los Angeles news reporter, saying we need to get out and we need to go ahead and essentially riot more.
I don't agree with Maxine Waters, so that we're in agreement.
Thank you.
But the question is, I want to go back to the initial, how we got it onto this topic, white
Sure.
nationalism. And the
Mhm.
thing is, before that, it was the head of the FBI who was appointed by Trump, I think Christopher Wray, who said our
Mhm.
biggest danger now is a white supremacist or the white nationalists in our country, and how he was the one that originally said it, and most of the intelligence groups agree with it. What we have to worry about is internal conflicts. And basically, these are people who say, you're taking away our freedom. Again, the ones that are saying Trump should have been the election was rigged. We want to overturn the election. We will do it violently. And these are the groups. They might be small. I don't know a number, but they are organized and they do have lethal weapons. You see them walking around with the AK-15s and the weapons on their shoulder. I don't know that they didn't use that in when they did the Capitol. But basically, they were organized, and there were a lot of in fact, there was a lot of ex-military people there who had the whole organization. They knew how to, it wasn't something that was, it wasn't
one single incident, my dear. We need to get beyond that, and to use this as a rallying cry to go ahead and divide the nation along race lines. I am embarrassed for President Biden. He is dividing us because suddenly I need to change my color.
Well, no, but wait, when they say white nationalist, I don't think that I'm a white nationalist. I don't think any of my black friends.
You don't think there's black nationalists? You don't think there's Asian nationalists? Why would you actually even use the term white nationalist?
Because that's what these groups consider themselves, and they're the ones that have.
They are a minor group of people. We have bigger problems, and we need to, at this point right now, address those bigger issues. I mean, I have to say, when I heard, and I'm very proud of Tim Scott, who is our senator here in South Carolina.
Right.
And once again, he said, America is not racist. We certainly have our issues. We certainly have our problems, but we are not racist. Are we, Maxie? That's Max.
Yeah, right. You'll have a black cat. No, I don't, well, it's hard because I don't consider us racist, but I think we're prejudiced.
Well, I think everybody has their leanings towards people one way or the other. I had an interesting conversation with an ultra liberal here in South Carolina, and she asked me, who did I vote for? And I said, that has nothing to do with anything. Can we not have a discussion without bringing in who did I vote for? I voted for Dr. Seuss. I voted for who the hell cares? It's once again this division. And unfortunately, President Biden has had an opportunity, and he's done it in the past, to be moderate, to bring people together. He doesn't bring people together with some of the crazy things he says.
Well, I mean, okay, what are the other crazy things he says? What do you think of his policies?
Well, in terms of what he talked about yesterday?
No, the education,
I think that it would be incumbent upon us to have education, not a situation where we have critical race theory being taught to 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds. I think that would be kind of a problem. I think also we should be teaching people. In fact, I'm an alumni of Cypress College in California. And there was a young man who was on a Zoom call who had completed his presentation about police officers. And he said to his professor, it was on a Zoom call, that he felt as though police were heroes. Well, this particular professor, who of course holds the power of the grade over this young man, said, "You're absolutely wrong. How can you say that they're heroes? They're not heroes. They're bullies. They're this, they're that." And the young man said, "But," and he was very calm about it. He says, "So who would you call if someone had broken into your house, was holding you hostage, was being threatening to you? Who would you call? Would you call the police?" And she goes, "No, I wouldn't call the police. And you're absolutely completely wrong. We need to defund the police." And then we went on and on and on about this situation. What I've said is that maybe the states that don't want to have police, California, Oregon, Washington, New York State, they should get rid of the police and
I,
people can fend for themselves.
I'd call up,
I,
I'd call up Superman.
but I do like having the ability to call
I,
someone
I, I,
independently to give me a hand.
I don't think there's any state in the union that wants to do away with police. This was a rhetoric of the far whatever. People want to reorganize the police, make them different, not make them a hostile group that comes in to handle the situation. They're not military. They're not like when our military go into foreign countries to fight battles and to fight the insurgents. Our police are to help the people that they are.
Well, let me ask you a question. How did you feel about Tim Scott's response to President Biden's?
Well, I think part of it had nothing to do with what Biden said when he was talking. He was talking about the past issues. What I'm looking for criteria is what the policies that he professed. What what the 2 trillion. I know it's an awful lot of money. What the $2 trillion is going to buy, as far as education is, paid leave for parents taking care of their children, money for preschooling. And the only thing that I heard is, "Oh, we have to be independent." With Tim Scott, we have to be independent and let the parent decide. No, a government is almost like a parent. A government is, it's no, it provides the education. It provides it's supposed to be like very paternal. It's the people who need help, they'll help. I mean, that is social welfare. That is social security. Why do we have social security? Who cares about the older people? If they were dumb enough not to have money, what difference is it? Put them in an old age home. Put them in what they had in people place for the poor, a debtor's prison, which they did in England. At the not last century, but the century before that. Who cares? Why are we protecting the people we're an individualist country, right? If you can't, do it yourself, government shouldn't help you. I mean, education, if you could afford it, fine.
Well, I think you're going over to the far there's a middle to all of this. And I did say I was also offended by the fact that we the people are we the government. We're not we the people, we the government. We are Americans who elect representatives to best represent our interests. That's what this is all about. And I do get very concerned when I'm hearing mostly progressive agendas being pushed by this particular administration. I find it very concerning because more than half of the Americans also voted for a different way of doing things. We're going to have higher taxes. So are you. The situation now with the income disparity is going to be quite critical because we had good solid gains for Blacks and Hispanics in terms of the poverty level going down. We did, and the reason was for deregulation. We also had the repatriation of money coming back into the United States. Do you think higher taxes, higher than China, is going to bring money back in and keep money here in the United States? Of course not. These are basic economic issues. And I have to say, his tone of voice apparently elicited some unbelievable comments from the news media, fawning over him. I listened to Brian Williams and I just jaw-dropping what he was saying about the whole speech, the fawning over. The other thing that was amazing to me was NBC News said that Operation Warp Speed was under the Biden administration. I'm sorry, that's a lie. That's not a mistruth. That's not propaganda. It's a lie. And you know what? You can't do that. Americans are starting to wake up. And you know what? People are getting ticked off. We're getting
Well,
ticked off.
I think, well, again, from what you say, I hadn't heard that, but I think what they're saying is the warp speed was the distribution of the vaccine, not the doing the vaccine, because obviously it was during the
Warp speed was the development of the vaccine. It was also the distribution of the vaccine.
right,
They
but
had an admiral that was working on it, Admiral Gerard, I believe that's what his name was, who was in charge of making sure the distribution was to go very, very well to the states. Now, the states may have bungled, in many cases, bungled the way that the vaccine was given out. That's true. It didn't happen here in South Carolina. I got my vaccination very, very early on,
when
as did my husband.
when did you get your vaccination?
I got mine middle of February.
Hmm.
And I had my second vaccination the 1st of March.
And who was the president at that time?
I understand that.
Now,
But that was all set up. He only managed to get into office January the 20th. We had our first shot the first part of February. There's no way that good old Biden could have gone ahead and in 2 weeks managed to get all this.
Well, I have a question for you. If the problem was with Trump is that the states were in charge, why isn't that the same problem with Biden?
In what way?
Didn't the federal government provide the organization telling the states what to do? It wasn't, okay, here's a vaccine, guys, go do it yourself.
What Admiral Gerard did was he worked with the Trump administration to make sure that once the vaccine was available and was approved by the FDA for emergency use, he was the one who managed to make sure that sufficient numbers of vaccinations, as soon as they were produced, were given to the states. It was the state's job to make sure that that got on out. And here in South Carolina, as I say, as soon as those vaccines hit, Prisma Healthcare opened up a large facility, and they were doing probably close to 5,000, 6,000 shots per day. Very well organized, very well put together.
So how come it wasn't organized? When did the vaccine come out?
Exactly the day after the election was over. So it was Pfizer announced it the day after the election, which of course people feel as though there was a political element to that. I don't know about that. But they said they had sufficient vaccinations to be able to go. It took them about a month and a half to completely ramp up, and then they started to ship the vaccinations first part of January, middle of January. So we got ours, like I say, 1st of February. My husband got his the first part of February as soon as we could possibly get in. I mean, the one thing that I do find is interesting is you folks in California are still closed in terms of schools, are you not?
No, I think we're open.
Okay. What's interesting is that in Oregon, they're about ready to shut down the restaurants again. And we have family up in Oregon. Of course, this particular individual is just beside herself, worried about trying to make sure that she can make a living. But, bottom line is, I do believe that this administration, and this is only an opinion, this is not a reporter's report, but I do feel as though they would prefer to have the COVID pandemic continue ad infinitum. I mean, when President Biden talks about the fact that wearing a mask is patriotic, what the hell does that have to do with science? It's patriotic to do this. My husband and I are wearing our masks because we want to make sure that we're not going to be infected by anyone, and we're not going to potentially, even though we're both vaccinated, infect anyone else. That's the reason we're doing it. We're not doing it because it's quote unquote patriotic. But, once again, it's just sad that this individual, Mr. Biden, cannot seem to get things straight, that he's representing all of America, not just one single part, just a small, sliver, the Democrats. You've got to work together. And I have to tell you, they get rid of the filibuster. I know that's what the Democrats are looking for. And then when are you going to have the minority able to bring in any type of argument, any type of counter argument? This is third world stuff.
Well, actually, the filibuster was not part of originally the government. The filibuster, I forget, was when it was instituted at the beginning of the 20th century.
Mhm.
I don't think the filibuster was before. And
But it did help represent the minority, whether that minority be Republican as it is right now, or whether it also be Democrat. I
yeah,
mean, the Republicans had the chance to get rid of the filibuster. They decided not to because once again, it silences the majority or the minority. We need to have both sides of the story told
well,
together.
supposedly that's what the Supreme Court does. The Supreme Court protects the minorities. That's a function. It's not the function of Congress to protect the minorities. It's a function of the Supreme Court. There should be no law that is against the minority groups. And again, that's why supposedly, we have that. Originally, the Supreme Court blocked all the Jim Crow laws that they wanted.
Mhm.
This was supposedly when the filibuster came in.
Mhm.
But now you keep on saying Biden only represents a sliver
Yeah, he does.
population. But then now he had what, 76 million, 77 million. Trump had 74, 75 million. So you
Mhm.
represent Biden as having the sliver, but the mass majority wanted Trump.
But interestingly enough,
And we had more millions that did it. Oh, what do you think about the we're never going to come to agreement in this, but we can talk. What do you think about the recount in Arizona?
I hope it's going to be fair. I don't care which way it goes. I just want it to be fair. I know that when I left the news business and became a private investigator myself, and my late husband and I did white collar fraud and did a lot of forensic audits because he was a CPA. I want it to be impartial, and I do believe that it probably will be impartial. I know the Democrats want to stop the recount and the forensic audit, and a judge at this point said, no, we're going to continue that. So if in fact something finds there's been an issue, I think that needs then to continue to go to Wisconsin, to Nevada, to Pennsylvania, to Michigan, and look at what really happened and really find out forensically, that's following the science, exactly how
When you
things
say
were pulled together.
forensically, what do you mean by that?
I'm talking scientifically.
Yeah, how do you do it scientifically?
You literally count the ballots, you compare as to the number of voters who were eligible to come in. You look to see exactly what the nature of the ballot itself was. I have a contact in Maricopa County, and that particular individual, who will remain nameless because she is a good source, indicated to me that when she went to vote, she found it very odd that she was given a felt pen, which when she cast her vote actually bled to the other side. She then turned the ballot over and continued to vote for her local officials. And she then noticed that it was bleeding to both sides, which would in fact invalidate that particular ballot,
Right.
because once again, the voting machines could not tell exactly who and how she wanted to go ahead and vote. She went back and said to the election poll official, what exactly, why am I being used, why am I using this pen? It's bleeding through. And in fact, the people from the opposite party that were voting differently got a ballpoint pen versus one party got the felt marker. So once again, that's only one little story. It needs to be forensically checked out. It certainly can be, because in fact, when I was working as a forensic auditor, and I worked for the Orange County Registrar of Voters Office in Santa Ana, California, where there was a very, very tight runoff. We guarded each one of the ballots, and the ballots that were thrown out, those also had to be voted and looked at. So a forensic audit looks at all of the ballots and makes a determination, and does you have abilities to be able to look at the numbers and see exactly what has happened. So it'll be interesting to see.
Question for you: how does the person giving out the pens know whether the person is a Trump voter or a Biden voter?
Because you're asked whether you have a Democratic ticket or you have a Republican ticket. So in that particular case, we, for example, here in South Carolina, we had Republican ballots and we had Democratic ballots.
The only thing I know is in the primaries, if you're in a primary where you vote a party, I don't remember going why the ballot would be different for me than it would be different for you, at least not in
Well,
California.
it was in South Carolina.
Ballots.
It was in South Carolina.
That's strange. Double check on that, because that is strange. You come in, you have an R on your forehead. I'm a Republican. And how do they know? And how do they know you're a Republican? Maybe you lied.
Well, no. You know that you're Republican because, for example, on the voter list, there is an R or there is a D or there is an I. So on the lists that they check you on, because they, once again, are asking for identification. Boy, what a concept. It's exactly what Georgia is asking for, is identification. So I present my identification, which is a driver's license that is certified that I am who I say I am. They compare it, and in fact, it shows.
But how did
Republican.
Well, if I don't know why the ballots would be different. A Republican, why you would get a Republican ballot and I would get a Democratic ballot.
Well, I don't know. I questioned that in terms of my contact in Maricopa, and she said this is exactly what happened.
But they had an audit in Maricopa. What was
No, they
that
didn't.
all of it? Yes, they did. That was the second one.
No, they didn't. And what's interesting about it is the audit that they ended up doing was a thimbleful of the ballots. When you do a forensic audit, you're looking at all of the ballots. It takes a long time to do it. But you don't simply do a sampling. You have to do a complete audit.
And this group, Cyber Ninjas, I think that's the name of it. They've never done this before. This is, I think, their first time that they're doing.
Well, then that is the mistake of the lawmakers that are there. If they have never done this before, that is the mistake of the lawmakers. As I was critical of Georgia, who put together this law without having Blacks and Hispanics leaders to be actually there, as the new law, which was simply asking for voter identification, that they were not there. Once again, flat-footed Republicans, and I'll call them flat-footed until they get smart, because you've got, the image is very important to people. It's very important.
How about the head person, the one who its company it is, I don't know, his president or owner. He's an avowed Trumpite who thinks that the president was robbed.
Well, then I certainly would not have chosen that individual. Why would you choose a company that is biased?
Why? Because they were Republicans and they went. And they want to reverse. Okay, now I have a question which I don't know. Let's say they prove that the election was rigged. What would happen?
Probably end up going to the Supreme Court.
And let's say they found out that the election was rigged. Would they then declare what would the Supreme Court say? Trump is now president?
You got a massive problem here.
Yeah,
but once again, that's the whole reason that the Supreme Court, and you heard that there were enormous, very loud shouting matches going on with Justice Roberts screaming at the rest of the court about what would happen if we decided to rule on the Pennsylvania last minute change of the voting rules, which in fact, Justice, I can't even remember the guy's name, but one of the justices said,
Scalia?
In fact, Scalia, thank you, did not, he said that the lawmakers did it in violation of state law.
They overstepped their authority,
They did. And still the Supreme Court did not want to rule on that, which of course the whole reason apparently might have been, there'll be riots.
Yeah, well, I have a picture of us in 20 years from now.
Yeah.
And your beautiful blonde hair will probably be blonde, because even if it turns gray, it'll still be blonde. And I'll have wrinkles all on my face, and we're still talking about the same thing. Because the election is over, yet we're still talking about the election.
And that's the reason that I do hope, and I know that President Trump talked to Maria Bartiromo on Fox Business about 2 days ago. And I must admit, I voted for Trump. I like Trump, but I must say that I hope that he does not run for office. I hope that what he does is he mentors people, the Ron DeSantis of the world. DeSantis has done an outstanding job shepherding the public through the COVID crisis in Florida.
Okay.
I hope that there are other people that he will shepherd through. Tim Scott, always even tempered. He was the one who sponsored the police reform bill that unfortunately the Democrats didn't even want to debate. But he at least made the attempt to be able to put together a police reform act. I think that he proved himself to be a presidential contender.
Why do we need police reform?
Why do we need police reform? Listen, I'll tell you, I don't want I don't want to be paying Derek Chauvin's, pardon my language, goddamn pension for the rest of his life.
Why? Aren't you happy with him?
He murdered somebody. He murdered somebody.
Okay, well, that's one person.
Yes, and there are other cops.
So why do we need reform? Why do we need reform? They're doing a great job.
Stop it. You're baiting me. It's called baiting.
Oh, okay.
You know why we need reform, because the problem is, how in the world, apparently Chauvin had done this on numerous occasions. And Amy Klobuchar, who was in a position to be able to do something about it, apparently caved to the police union. You can't cave to the police union when you've got somebody who basically is abusing his power. And he did it. And this now resulted in the death of a single individual. And frankly, the complete disruption, the tearing apart of America. It tore us apart.
Well, should we ban unions?
Ban unions? No, but I do think what we should do.
Why do the police have a union?
The union, because you know what, you're baiting me again.
I'm doing what you do. I'm going over to the nth degree.
But you know what I'm saying. Yeah. Bottom line is if you've got somebody who's abusing their power, you can't let them stand. You can't let them continue to operate. And there he was training 4 young cadets. Well, this is the way you're supposed to treat people.
Well, the problem with the police, one of the problems is the way they recruit, the type of people they recruit. Yeah. Which is something else. Anyway, do you know we're talked about 40 minutes?
No, there's no way.
Yeah. I think my alarm went off about 10, 15 minutes ago, but I was just so involved in the discussion. I said, okay, I control the time.
I know you do. Thank you.
So, and I wanted to talk about life in South Carolina and what's happening with you in the summertime and the hen. I didn't hear anything about the hens and your cat.
Oh.
And I talked to you earlier, you were tending your garden and
yes.
your lawn, and I wanted to find out about that because I have a feeling no matter, both of us have valid points.
Yeah.
Of course, I don't think you have valid points, but
you do. Yeah, you do. But you know what? But we've got to have discussions like this, Malcolm, and we've got to make sure that our lawmakers are having discussions like this. Otherwise,
I have a difference in the law. I invite as we talked about last week, I would not like a person, a law person, someone that we elect, just to reflect the opinions of people who elected him.
You made a very good point about that. You want them to lead. I agree. I agree.
I want them to be of higher intelligence. I want them to do what they consider is right.
Yeah, I agree. And what's good for the majority of people, and watch out for those who are less fortunate.
Right, and I think that that's part of our government. That's why I'm saying initially that I think it's a lot paternal. It takes care of people that are less fortunate to make the whole country as a whole better. I'm talking too much.
No, you're not.
Anyway, next week.
Thanks again, Malcolm. My dear wishes to all your whole family.
Okay, mine to yours. Send my love to Fish. Bye.
Bye.